Go. Hi, I'm Kenneth Thomas, fellow at Good Jobs First and professor emeritus at the University of Missouri, St. Louis. And I'm here to talk today about the European Union system of controlling subsidies, successful limits in action. There's 4 things to know from this talk. First of all, the European Union ensures transparency of subsidies via pre-notification requirement. Every subsidy or subsidy program has to be notified to the European Commission in advance and not implemented until it's approved. Second, European Union policies prevent rich areas from outbidding poor areas. Every region within the European Union has a maximum aid limit, and it varies inversely with income per capita. Third, for large projects, and this just means over 50 million euros of investment, the region's aid limit is sharply reduced. So large projects can't get, billion-dollar subsidies like they can in the United States. And the 4th key thing to know about the EU system is it works. And I'm going to give some examples of that a little later on. So why should we look at the European Union? First of all, the US system is broken. We spend $35 to $70 billion annually on subsidies to business and investment incentives. Depending on the estimate, we see things like the outrageous subsidies for Foxconn or Amazon that top $1 billion. We see this $35 to $70 billion in the form of tax breaks and grants and tax increment financing and many more ways, although these are perhaps the 3 biggest. So to look at the European Union more generally, first, like I said, is transparency. All state aid must be notified in advance to the European Commission. There's penalties for non-notification. In particular, the company can be forced to give back the subsidy with interest to the government that gave it. Second, large projects, even if they're under an approved program, or what they call in British English a scheme, large projects have to be notified individually nevertheless. Like I said, non-notified subsidies are subject to repayment with interest. And you can see all the case decisions at this website here, what they call the ISEF database. And this gives you both approved and rejected cases of proposed state aid. It also gives you all sorts of antitrust decisions as well, because DG Competition, which oversees the state aid rules, covers both antitrust and state subsidies. So this definitely increases transparency by having these huge amounts of information available on what's actually given. So second thing we want to know is regional aid. And so regional aid are programs that are set up to help the poorer regions of the European Union. And these are also the types of aid given primarily to mobile investments. So if a company's coming in to invest in somewhere in the European Union, it's most likely going to receive regional aid for that new investment. Each region has a maximum aid level, and it runs from 0 to 50% of the cost of the investment. So this is a metric that the EU calls aid intensity. Like I said, just subsidy divided by investment. And so that's the terms in which the maxima are expressed. So the richest areas can't give any. If you want to put something in Paris or Brussels or Hamburg, you're not looking at any regional aid. If you want to invest in Northwest Bulgaria, you'll probably be able to get 50% of the cost of the investment. But it's notable that in the United States, there are plenty of examples of investments that have received at or above 100% of the cost of the investment. I can think of one off the top of my head is Electrolux, which went to Memphis, relocating from the Montreal suburbs, and essentially received 99+% of the cost of its investment. And later, Electrolux closed up, and the state of Tennessee and the various governments that had contributed to the subsidy were all on the hook because they didn't have a clawback clause in the agreement. So going back to the European Union, the consequence of this aid system is that rich regions can't outbid poor regions. If Northwest Bulgaria can give 50% and maybe someplace in rural France can give 10%, they're not going to be France isn't going to just be able to add money to this subsidy and say, well, we will match what Bulgaria is giving because it's against the rules. And every 7 years, each member state of the European Union negotiates a regional aid map with the European Commission, and it gets eventually approved. So here's approximately what the aid map looks like. If you see on the screen, we have more developed regions in blue, middling regions, transition regions as they're called on the map in yellow, and less developed regions in red. So the less developed regions have a maximum of either 50% or 35%. So as you can see, most of the is eligible to give the maximum are in the former Eastern European countries. The Baltic states, East Germany, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary, and so forth, and down to Bulgaria and Romania over here. And a few other places like parts of Greece, southern Italy, and a lot of Portugal and a little bit of Spain, and a tiny bit of the United Kingdom. So those areas can give the most. Areas in yellow will probably be able to give 15 to 35%, and some places within the blue areas will be able to give up to 15%. There's other criteria for designating assisted regions, and not just low. If there's really high unemployment or if there's low population density. So there's subsidies available, say from the middle of Sweden north. That's how, for instance, Facebook was able to get a small subsidy to invest in a data center in Luleå, Sweden. So moving on. The third thing is scaling down the aid for large investment projects. And in 1998, the European Union introduced what it called the Multisectoral Framework for Large Investments Projects. And so those applied, as you gather, for all sectors of the economy. There were several sectoral programs already in existence for automobiles, steel, textiles, and so forth. And so what the multi-sectoral framework envisioned and what was eventually put into place was to bring all of this under a single set of rules. But beginning in 1998, they set up a system of scaling down the aid maximum for each region for large investments. Like I said, it's only 50 million euro investment qualifies as large. So for the amount of an investment for between 50 and 100 million euros, there's a 50% cut in the maximum. And above 100 million euros, there's a 66% cut in the maximum. So what that means is, even if you're in one of the poorest areas of the European Union, like say again, Northwest Bulgaria, you're not going to be eligible for 50% of the investment once the investment's above 100 million. In fact, you're only going to be able to get 17% beyond 100 million euros, 50% times 34%, right? The inverse is 66%. And so, since you're only adding 17 million euros for 100 million euros, it's going to take you a long time. You'd have to have a gigantic, 10 billion euro investment, and very few investments that large would actually be suitable for these least developed regions, which of course have much worse infrastructure and so forth than the richest regions of the European Union. So, you might put a wafer fabrication plant someplace like Dresden, Germany, which has quite a few. This is part of Eastern Germany, and but it's no longer an area with a 50% maximum, whereas you wouldn't even consider putting it in Northwest Bulgaria. Okay, so as I said, the system works, and so this provides ideas for what we can do here in the United States. You can find that U.S. states give much more money to the same companies in the European Union. I just mentioned Dresden. If you compare the amount of subsidies that Germany has given in Dresden, Eastern Germany, to American advanced micro devices, which has an investment in also in upstate New York, you can see that as the scaling down rules got progressively tightened in the European Union, and of course as the aid maxima were also reduced, the amount of money given by Dresden for several projects I got from advanced micro devices, now called global foundries, went down and down and down. And the last one only got about 10% of the cost of the investment, maybe 11%. And so in New York State, it got about 30% of the cost of the investment, which was like a $1.2 billion subsidy there. AMD / Global Foundries has never gotten $1 billion in Eastern Germany. So another way we could look at it is how many $100+ million subsidies have been given, and the numbers in the United States are way larger than in the European Union. In fact, in 2019, there were 5 of them, which came to $750 million, $617 million, $405 million, $300 million, and $200 million. In the European Union, there were no $100 million+ subsidies approved in 2019. There was one proposed project which had a $130 million subsidy, and it was delayed for a formal investigative procedure. So that may eventually be approved, but often being brought into the formal investigative procedure means that they're going to reject it. Not 100% all the time, but very frequently. There's another example is Hyundai advanced in Alabama and the Czech Republic, and received much more aid in Alabama than it did in the Czech Republic, which we should also point out is a considerably poorer area than Alabama is. So to wrap it up, maybe the conclusions and a couple of sources from myself. The 4 takeaways, again: more transparency, regionally varying aid maxima, which makes it impossible for rich areas to outbid poor areas. You sharply reduce the aid maximum for large projects, which makes billion-dollar subsidies impossible, and strong evidence of success, as we saw in the different kinds of comparisons that we just looked at. My book, Competing for Capital, Europe and North American and Global Era, published by Georgetown University Press in 2000, and it put together for the first time a lot of information on economic development in the United States and comparing it with the European Union system that we just looked at, and also with developments in Canada as well. And it has all the theory, and I might like to think that it's actually fairly approachable book for non-specialist readers. I've also blogged since 2011 at middleclasspolitical.com. It has a lot of stuff on economic development, though other issues as well. And that's where some of the examples that I've given in this talk were originally developed, although some of them also later made it into my more recent book, Investment Incentives in the Global Competition for Investment. So I hope you find this helpful. There's a lot of ideas here that we can't directly transpose into the United States because we have much different institutions than the European Union does, and a lot of differences in our political structures. But they're democracies. They've shown that the problems we have are soluble in practice, but we have to figure out how we want to solve them here in the United States. Thanks for your attention. Take care.